Hello, welcome to the training webinar for today. And today we are going to talk custom tasks. This is going to be kind of a more or less of a beginner session today. So we're just going to be going over the fundamentals of custom tasks and talking about some of the most common custom tasks that you'll find yourself wanting to use on a recurring basis. So with that in mind, we will go ahead and get started. The first thing that we have to talk about is how custom tasks are organized. When you download the custom tasks from BP-Logix, they are downloaded as a PDZ file, which is essentially just a zip file that you need to import into the root of your partition. So as you can see here, we have our default partition, and the custom task folder has square brackets around it. That's the common BP-Logix file naming convention for items that go into the root that are accessed globally from within the system. That is certainly what custom tasks are. They do need to be in the same location on every server, so we recommend that you import them into the root of your partition. So you can see that they're here. Also, I have a second partition on this machine where I actually work to build training courses. And as you can see, there is a custom tasks folder here in this partition as well. If you have multiple partitions, you are going to need to place a custom tasks folder in both of those partitions. And by place the folder, I mean import the folder into the root level of your partition, and it must exist on all partitions. Partitions don't talk to each other. They don't share data. So the fact that I might have a custom tasks folder here has no bearing whatsoever on what I'm doing down here in this partition. Each partition needs to have its own custom tasks setup. The custom tasks themselves are organized in, as we can see here, several subfolders. Each subfolder has a different type of custom task. Most commonly, you are going to be using the form and form data mapping custom tasks, and to a somewhat lesser extent, but still fairly frequently, the process custom tasks. So each of these folders sort of describes the situation in which you would use that custom task. So in most cases, you're going to be using form and form data mapping. That's most of the stuff that we do in Process Director, is changing the user interface for end users by invoking those tasks. The process task we use for actions that are related to a specific timeline. And we'll talk about some of these here in a little bit. Now, even though we provide you with several custom tasks like the Salesforce custom tasks, you probably can't use them. Some of these custom tasks, like Salesforce, or there are some MS Dynamics custom tasks here. There are some generic OData custom tasks. We provide these custom tasks as part of the standard package. However, they do require a separate license. There is a company called CData, and CData purchased the intellectual rights, the copyright, I suppose, for OData connectors. OData is just a type of generic data connector, but a lot of third-party software pieces that people use rather widely, like Microsoft Dynamics CRM, or for ERP, or for Salesforce for CRM, or just a generic OData custom task. The licenses for those custom tasks are all governed by a company called CData, and you have to buy a specific license from CData to run any of those custom tasks. If you're a cloud customer, you just send us your licensing materials. We will install it on your server and you'll be able to run those CData custom tasks. So we don't have any control over that licensing. A couple of years ago, I say a couple, probably several is probably a better way of saying it now. These custom tasks all worked, but at some point back in about 2016, 2017, CData decided that they would restrict the licensing and require everybody to use a license. So it used to be that because we were a vendor using CData's stuff, that we could just distribute it with our software. CData changed that. So we still distribute them. They're just unusable until you get those special licenses. One thing that's important to remember about custom tasks is that they are not related to the version of the product. Now, that's a bold statement to make, and it's also not entirely true. There are times whenever we make changes to the product that fundamentally affect how the custom tasks work, and we have to issue a new version of the custom tasks that are valid for that product version and above. I think we've only had to do that twice in the past 12 years that I can remember, but it does occasionally happen. For the most part, however, custom tasks are separately downloaded and separately updated, and they should be updated relatively frequently. I would say at every 6 months to a year, you should probably be downloading the custom tasks. Now, if you go to the support site and log in, you can get access to the downloads page. And unlike Process Director, custom tasks are just PDZ files. They're literally just a set of forms and scripts that automatically work in Process Director. So you can just import them directly onto your system. So as a cloud customer, you don't need us, unlike an upgrade of the product itself, you don't need us to do anything as far as giving you the custom tasks. You can always just come and download them. As you can see, we last released a custom task package on 13 April. That is our most recent custom task. To refer back to something I just mentioned, these legacy custom tasks only for Process Director 4.41 and below. So after 4.41, when we switched to 4.5, we needed a complete new set of custom tasks because we did make some fundamental changes to the architecture, and to keep the custom tasks working, the custom tasks, like these custom tasks here, would not work on 4.41 or below, and the custom tasks for those versions of the product wouldn't work on anything higher. But for the most part, we don't really have to worry about the Process Director version and the custom task version. Each custom task, in fact, has its own individual version number, which we'll look at here in a second. So you should come to this page every 6 months to a year and download the custom tasks. In the past 3 weeks, I have seen custom tasks on customer sites. One had not been updated since 2021. One had not updated their custom tasks since 2019. That's a bad thing. So you do need to upload or do need to download and import those custom tasks into your system. Now, because they are a PDZ file, it becomes really easy to do that. All you have to do is just select your default partition and then just go to create new and import objects. And you can just import once you download the custom task, you can just import them and it will just automatically overwrite your old custom tasks with the new custom tasks so that you have them, updated at the appropriate time. As you can see here, I last updated these custom tasks in 2026. You will see some custom tasks on this system that are no longer valid. We used to have some social media custom tasks where you could post to Facebook or post to Twitter. They've completely redone their APIs, and we did have a customer or two that used them rather extensively, but both Facebook and, well, now X, I guess, changed their APIs, and that customer stopped using those custom tasks in any event. And so you will not see them when you download them. In fact, I believe I've removed them from the documentation. So you may see some custom tasks on my system. As you can see, these custom tasks have not been updated since 2024, which is when I think we just pulled them out of the custom task package. But you do need to do this fairly routinely. I mentioned the version numbers for the custom tasks, so let's just grab one and what's a good show alert? There we go. This probably has not been updated forever. Let's try advanced show alert. That's probably a newer custom task. So whenever if you ever want to know what the version number of your custom task is, there are two ways to do it. But all you have to do, well, I say there's two ways to do it. One is to go to the custom task itself and hit preview custom config to actually show you a preview of the configuration screen. The other method is just wherever you are using the custom task, whether it's in a form or a timeline, just hit the configure button to open up this configuration screen and scroll all the way down to the bottom. And that is the version of this custom task. Each custom task has their own individual version. So if you're ever putting in a tech support ticket, and you say, hey, I'm trying to convert to PDF. I'm using convert to PDF. It's not converting something the way I expected. The first question I'm probably going to ask you is, what version of the custom task are you using? Do not come back and say version 6.1.504, because that's not the custom task version. You have to actually open the custom task, scroll all the way to the bottom of that specific custom task, and let me know what version you're on, and that will let me know whether you have the current version or whether you have a deprecated version. The other thing to remember is that on this downloads page, we're giving you the entire custom task package when you download it. So there is no version of the custom tasks. There's our custom task package, and each custom task is individually versioned. So as you can see, we have this release 13 April 2026 here, but whenever we look at the custom or the configuration screen for this custom task, you can see that this is actually going back to April of 2025. So, and this is, by the way, a date time group that we're using for the custom task version. It's literally the date that the custom task was last published. So this custom task was published on April 29th, 2025, even though the most recent version was 13 April 2026. So that version is a year older than the release date of the custom tasks. And the reason is because we haven't needed to change that custom task. And so its version number is currently still stuck in a April 2025 version number. So, by the way, if you look at the version number of the custom task, that automatically tells you the date in which it was published. So so if I tell you, the current version of the custom task, because this is something that I might do, I might come back and say, okay, well, what version of the custom task are you on? Our current version is, 2025.4.29. What version are you using? And then you can check the version number and see if it's the most recent. One of the primary things that you should do, in fact, whenever you have a problem with a custom task, the very first thing you should do is go into that custom task and hit that preview custom config and figure out how old is that custom task. The other thing that you can do that's often helpful that will just let you know right away when was the last time you updated the custom task is just to go to the custom task folder and look at the update date column that you see here. That tells you basically the last time the custom task was updated. So as you can see, mine were updated on April 28th. So I know I have a pretty recent version of the custom task. In fact, the most recent version of all the custom tasks. And so that always lets you know when they were last updated. So if you're looking at the update date column and the year you see ends in 19 or 21, you are pretty much guaranteed that you need to update your custom tasks. Indeed, if it's the year 2025, you probably need to update your custom tasks as well. Now, that's not universally true. If you are still on, say, version 5.44.1104, I'd probably be a little more careful about updating the custom tasks. The truth is that while we do try to ensure that all of the custom tasks are backwards compatible where we can, and as we saw earlier, the one point where we couldn't was version 4.41. When we went to 4.5, it was not possible to make the custom tasks or several of the custom tasks backward compatible because of changes we had made to the product. So we needed a whole new set of them. That's very unusual. It still happens from time to time on individual custom tasks. We had, I think a month or two ago, we had a situation where we had released a brand new set of custom tasks, and one of the custom tasks called a routine in the product code itself that actually was not in the product prior to 6.1.3 something. And that custom task would just fail on any version prior to 6.1.314 or something like that. And of course, we had to go back in, change that custom task to make it backwards compatible. So we do make every effort to make all the custom tasks compatible. However, if you are still on, version 5 dot whatever, if you import a new version of the custom tasks, some of them may not work. And if that is so, you would need to tell us. Now, if you're on version 6, the custom tasks should all work. And honestly, they should all work on version 5 as well. But if you are on an older version, then you do have to be maybe a little more careful. You probably want to test on a test server first before importing the custom tasks. One of the other things that you might want to do when you go into your custom tasks directory, before you do an import, go to the properties of that folder and go to versions and create a version of your custom tasks. Because this will take a snapshot. If we do it here at the custom task folder level, it will take a shot of all of the existing custom tasks that you have. Great. You can even export that to an XML file and just save it in your content list if you want. The important thing to have, though, is that version. Because once you have that version, when you import the new custom tasks, if anything goes higgledy-piggledy and you find some sort of bug, all you have to do then is go back to this folder, this custom task folder. In fact, I should probably just create a label, just create a version so we can see what happens when you create a version real quick. And right now, it's just zipping up the entire folder to save an archive of the custom tasks as they currently exist. And I had hoped before I'd finished that sentence that the archive would have been created and we could have seen the version number. The system has decided to work a little slower than that today. But what I wanted to show you is this, our ability to go back and apply previous versions. So at this point, I've now created a snapshot of the custom tasks as they exist at this date and time out here in California. At this point, I could go ahead and import a new set of custom tasks. So I could import the PDZ. It would overwrite all of my custom tasks, of course. And then if something ever went wrong, all I have to do is come back to this folder, click apply this version. Well, that's probably not what I would do. What I would probably do is create a V2. And once I have a version 2, then I would go back to version 1 and apply that version. That would revert me back to my previous status, and all my CTs would work as they have been. And so therefore you can always backtrack your way out of it. I have an entire webinar on versioning, but I think versioning is something we should probably talk about more. Versioning saves you from a multitude of evils. If you version every time you import something into Process Director, so I would import my new custom tasks and then immediately come in and create a new version, not just for the custom task, but if you import an application, every time you import that application, you should create a version prior to the import if one doesn't already exist. And then as soon as you do an import, you should also create another version. That way you have a version history. You can always revert back to a previous version. It is not an entirely unknown phenomenon to create a new version of an application, place it on production, and then find out that as a designer / developer, you've done something horribly, horribly wrong, and things go terribly awry. And if you have versions of a version of your previous working model, then you can always just click apply this version, and you can escape the horrible situation that you may have designed yourself into. So it does give you a quick out and returns everything to status quo ante. So you should probably be thinking about versioning a lot more than you are. I don't do a lot of versioning on this system because I'm, the only user on it, and I'm the only person who ever makes any changes. And, other than you guys, I'm the only person who ever sees it. So I don't do a lot of versioning, but on a production system, you should really be using versioning pretty extensively. Now, there are some CTs that you had to use back in the olden times that you no longer need to use because there is a UI equivalent that makes the use of the custom task largely unnecessary. Pretty much everything in database connectors, other than SQL command and maybe rule query from database, but largely SQL command, most of these have been deprecated. Now, we're not taking them out of the product. Deprecated doesn't mean they don't work, nor does it mean that we aren't actively developing on them and certainly fixing bugs if anyone ever finds any. However, there are UI conventions available to us now that make these unnecessary. First of all, we have business values. You can always create a business value to pull data from an external data source. And you most likely want to do that. The trouble with custom tasks is that they are not reusable. And so we were in a situation prior to, I think, version 4.5, in fact, when if you wanted to pull data from a database to fill a form field or to fill a dropdown with options, you had to use one of these custom tasks. So you had to use either fill fields with from DB or fill dropdown from DB. And you had to use it over and over again, which means that if I have a dropdown that I'm using on 5 forms, what I would have to do is on each one of those 5 forms, I would have to go to, fill dropdown from DB. That's fill dropdown object. So where's fill drop down from DB? Right there. So I'd have to go here to this custom task and I'd have to configure it. And if I was filling the same drop down with the same database data on 5 different forms, what that meant was I had to individually go in and configure this custom task on every single form. That's a bit of a pain. It adds a lot of friction. I mean, it worked fine, but you had to constantly be reconfiguring each of these database connector custom tasks. Since we released 4.5, we now have business values and we now have the fill dropdowns and fill fields built into both the form and the process timeline itself. In fact, how deprecated are these custom tasks? Well, let's look at the version number for fill dropdowns from DB. It last received an update on June 11th, 2021. So this is not anymore a high value custom task. Now, if you've been a customer for a while and you have these custom tasks, we are not going to pull them, even though they're deprecated. All that means is you shouldn't be using them for new stuff. But I mean, you may have years worth of legacy stuff that has several of these custom tasks configured. We have to keep them in the product for backwards compatibility. But we'd probably never use these. And in general, if there is a UI method, you should use that. What you should do if you want to grab data from a database is just build a business value that does it. That way, that business value is reusable. It's globally available to all of your implementers if you set permissions on the business value appropriately. So no matter where I am in the product, if I need to grab data from a database, I can simply do that via a business value. And once I have that business value created, I never have to reconfigure it. And it works everywhere. All I have to do is call that business value. And because of that, we now have on both the form and the process timeline, we have both the set form data tab and the fill dropdowns tab. And of course, on the timeline itself, the timeline has a fill dropdowns, or I'm sorry, a set form data. We don't fill dropdowns from timelines, but we do have a set form data so that we can do a set form data directly from a process timeline or directly from a form. And really all you need is a business value that grabs your data. And it takes a couple of seconds to do that configuration, vice having to repeat the same configuration on the same custom task on 5 different forms. That's just a lot of extra work that you don't need to use. So, or you don't need to do. So if you have a UI method like set form data or fill dropdowns, you should be doing it in the UI using a business value to grab your data, rather than having to reconfigure these same set of custom tasks over and over and over. The one place where that falls down is the SQL command custom task. So let me step back. Here's how we handle SQL in Process Director. We're going to take whatever SQL statement you give us, and we're going to send that off to SQL Server. We don't care what you are going to tell the server to do. We're just going to take whatever you say you want done, and we're going to send it to SQL Server, and magic is going to happen. That means that you have to be real careful about the magic you invoke. So even though all of these are probably not necessary, except maybe rule query from DB, I think there's some edge cases where you can do that, but we are not doing edge case talking today. SQL command, though, that is one that you can't get rid of. And that's one that you can't use in a business value. Because business values are great for select something from some table. And you can use business values to run a select command all day long, or stored procedure, whatever. That's perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is run an update, insert, or delete command from a business value, because business values are global and every implementer has access to a business value. And if your business value says delete something, then every time that business value gets called, something is going to get deleted. And if I stick that business value on a form, every time a user uses that form, they can invoke the business value and data will be deleted. That is an extraordinarily bad idea. So if you were going to pass anything other than an insert command or a stored procedure that solely returns data, then you want the SQL command custom task, because the SQL command custom task is what enables you to write those SQL statements. Now, we are about to do in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, we're actually going to be talking about SQL commands and running SQL commands and sort of the basics of SQL in Process Director. So if you're going to do an insert, update, or delete command, then it needs to be done via the SQL command custom task. You do not want to use any of the easier ways of dealing with data, because they've all been virtualized, which means anybody can invoke them, and you really want to have a lot tighter control of that. So for insert, update, and delete commands, this is the SQL, this is the custom task you should be using, and nothing else. Never use a business value for doing a delete command. Now, could you put a delete command in a business value? Yes, because like I said, we're just going to take the SQL you give us and we're going to send it off to SQL Server. We really don't care what it is you tell us to do, or what command you tell us to send to SQL Server. We, your humble and obedient servants, will in fact tell SQL Server to do anything that you tell us to tell it to do. And you don't want to tell us to do certain things unless you explicitly intend for that data to be deleted. All right, so that gets us past sort of the basics of the custom task. Now let's talk about how we invoke them. Most custom tasks can be run either from a form using the Custom Task Event Mapping tab in a form definition, or they can be run from a process timeline by invoking the, let's get that open, by invoking the custom task type in the process timeline. One thing you will notice for most custom tasks, and I'll just explicitly pull a form one here, let's pull form data mapping. Let's just do copy form data. By the way, I want you to keep something in mind. Just store it away for a couple of minutes. If I open up the form section here, I see 3 items: decrypt files, mobile form import, and random code generator. 3, count them, 3 custom tasks that are available to me from the process timeline. And there are only actually 5 available in form data mapping, one of which is copy form data. Now, I'm going to add this custom task. And when I do, there is this field, set container form. So the first big difference that we see when running a custom task on a timeline versus a form is that on a timeline, I'm always going to see set container form. It says optional. Don't let that fool you. In most cases, it's not optional. You do need to set your container form, especially for something like copy form data. The whole purpose of copy form data is to take data from one form and place it into another form. How do I know what the one form is that I need to copy the data from? Well, I would have to set the container form for that data. So we'll set it to CT webinar form. So now the custom task knows, this is the form from whence we are retrieving data. You don't see that on a form custom task. So if I go into a form custom task and I say, okay, fine, let's look at form, by the way. Oh my goodness. all of a sudden I have a lot more custom tasks. I only had 3 on a timeline. Now I've got all of these. We will need to explain that briefly here in a second. But for now, let's go and just choose copy form data on the form, and we'll add that custom task. And the one thing that we don't see is, oh, where is our container form? We don't need to have a container form when we are running a custom task from a form. We're going to assume that if I'm running a custom task from this form, that this is my container form. This is where the data is coming from. So I don't need to explicitly match it. Now, the one difference on a form versus a process timeline is on a process timeline, I know when I'm going to run the custom task. I'm going to run it when that process timeline activity is invoked. On a form, conversely, I don't know when that custom task is supposed to run from the machine's point of view, from process director's point of view. You have to tell me when it's going to run. So you have to select a form event, which when fired will invoke the custom task. So those are the 2 big difference between running a custom task on a form vice a timeline. On a timeline, I need a container form, but there's no event. The event is the timeline activity starts. On a form, I already know what the container form is because it's where we're creating the custom task, but I don't know when to run it. So I need an event on the form. Other than that, everything is largely the same, except for, while most custom tasks can be run from a process timeline or a form, that's not universally true. And it is certainly not true in terms of the form and I think form data. Nope, there's only 5 in form data mapping anyway. So form is the big one here. Some of these custom tasks simply can't be run in the context of a process timeline. The reason is because I need to actually be in the context of the form as a custom task. I'm making myself a custom task now, I guess. So if I'm running in a form, I have a lot of context that's useful to me to run. If I'm running in a timeline, the form is not currently running usually, which means I don't necessarily have the form context I need to run from a process timeline. So especially here for the form type of custom task, a lot of these custom tasks are just, you're incapable of running them from a form. Let's take an example here. I'm going to close this. We're going to go back to the process timeline. So let's say that I am, yes, proceed, please. I am going to run a custom task, and I don't think I actually saved any of the notifications here or saved any of the configurations. So we're going to go here to the custom task, and we're going to go back over here to form. So let's say that I am at some location and I decide I want to do geolocation. Now we have a couple of cities as process director customers. And one of the things that is common for municipal bodies to do is to send out a whole bunch of code inspectors to look and be sure that everything is up to snuff for whatever the city ordinances are or building codes are. And if they find some sort of variance from the building code or some sort of zoning ordinance or whatever it might be, they need to do geolocation so that we know where they are, so that we have a record of where that code violation is occurring, and we can throw it on a pin on a Google map. That's all cool, but I can't do that from a process timeline. I can only do that from a form. So when we talk about context and stuff, have to remember where these items run. A custom task that runs in the process timeline is running on the server. Wherever that server is located, its centralized location. Because it's running on the server, it's actually running outside of the form, which means it's running outside of your device. So it doesn't have any access to any device information. So if I wanted to do a geolocation, I simply couldn't do it from a process timeline. I would have to do it from a form. Really, I should save these things. I have to do it from a form. So we go to form, and there we go. There's my get geolocation, because the form is running on my device. It's running on my machine locally. Until I submit it and the form closes and transmits all the information in the form back to the server, everything that's happening is happening on my device. So anything that requires local knowledge, like get geolocation, right? Get geolocation has to go into my device, get the location, either the Android or the iOS geolocation service, to be able to pull the lat and long for whatever my current location happens to be. That has to happen on my device. So that is part of the form's context. In fact, it even goes beyond the form context. It's really part of my device context. But it can only pull it if the form is open and it's running and it's on my device. Once I submit my form, it sends everything back to Process Director at its centralized server location, and anything that happens in the process timeline is happening outside of my device. I have no control over what goes on now for the process timeline. I've done my device bit. So while most custom tasks can be run on both a form or a process timeline, there is a small subset of custom tasks that only run on the form. There is similarly even a small set of custom tasks, a very small set, and I don't right off the top of my head remember specifically which ones, but there are a couple of custom tasks that can only be invoked from the process timeline. Okay, well, now what do I do? How do I figure out whether I want to run a custom task from the form or whether I should run it from the process timeline? I can't give you a hard and fast, this is always true guide, but I can give you some guidelines to think about. First of all, is what you're trying to do with the custom task related to the process itself? If there's something that needs to happen within the process or something that makes the process work the way it's supposed to work, then you would throw the custom task in the process itself. Sometimes it gets a little sketchy about whether that is true, but if it is part of the process and related to the process directly, you want it in the process. If it is not related directly to the process, then it's okay to throw it onto the form. But that gets really murky, and I'll show you why. So let's go to my form. And this is the example I always use, so you're probably real familiar with it. We're just going to throw in a form field here, and we're going to call this request number. And this is one of the standard fields that we put on every form here at BP Logix, as I've probably told you 1,000 times at this point. You should have a request number on the form. Now, normally, this doesn't have anything to do with the process. All we're trying to do is generate a unique request number that if we know it, we can pull the specific form or specific process timeline we need to pull. I've got to run a set form data. How do I do that? Number one, if you're going to pull a set form data, and especially if you're going to use some sort of sequence number built in, which is the easiest way of doing it, you can't really do it on the form. Because, if I just threw in like a default value of a sequence number for this form field, that means that every time an instance of the form was opened, it would generate the sequence number. And if the form actually was opened inadvertently, or for whatever reason, the user decided not to submit the form at that time, or they decided, you know what, I need to go to lunch. I'll come back and redo this later. Okay, great. But you've now burned the sequence number. And so rather than having this nice sequential set of sequence numbers, you get all these gaps as people open the form and then for whatever reason decide not to submit it and then reopen it later. Well, you don't want that to happen. So where you really want to set the sequence number is not on the form at all, even though it is really very much a form related object. What you would do instead, and you know what, I'm going to start saving things now rather than having to reconfigure everything every time I switch between objects. So I go back over here to my timeline. This is probably where I want to run it. Now, as I've explained before, there is a set form data. So for every rule, there is an exception. The exception is to don't use a custom task if you can use a UI feature. This is where we run across an exception to that rule. Because while I can use the set form data here, and I want it on the timeline because I don't want to burn sequence numbers, right? I only want a sequence number, a request number to be generated when I actually have a submitted form and I have a project running. Great. Now I can generate a sequence number because I'm really in the middle of a timeline instance. Technically, I could do it here. And I guess technically this is the most efficient and correct way to do it. I should just go to the set form data section and I should just select an event for, well, I've only got one activity, but I should just select it here. I wouldn't do that because the problem is that most of the time when you open up the process timeline, you see that the set form data is there. It's working, but you don't see it because the section is closed. I do like to make it obvious. So this is one of those weird cases where even though this is not a process deal that I'm working on, it's just really the form number that I want to set. I'm going to go here to custom task and I am going to use set form data. Even though there is now a UI to set the form data, and I rarely, if ever, have to use this, well, I guess this is the one if ever. I'm going to pick set form data. I'm going to add that custom task. I'm going to do my CT webinar form, and then I'm just going to go into my set form data, and I'm going to set request number to whatever weird sequence number I want to generate. So this is one of those weird exceptions to the, if it affects the process, do it in the timeline. If it affects the form, do it in the form. There are custom tasks that are edge cases where you might do both. Run process is one where you have to think about what you're doing whenever you are going to invoke that run process. If I want to create a sub process, and in this case, it would be an asynchronous sub process if I'm using the custom task, because process timelines actually already have, you know what? Let's create new activities instead of just I might want to come back to something. So I should probably do this right. If I use the process activity type, there's no custom task involved. I don't have to do anything. Now, the problem with the process activity type is that when it gets invoked and it's going to kick off a sub process, my main parent process is going to stop dead in the water because the process activity type invokes a sub process synchronously, which is to say that my parent process pauses and cannot continue until my synchronous sub process is totally complete. So this will pause my process timeline until the sub process that I pick, and all I have to do is go over and select some process to start. And timeline is going to stay here on activity 2 until that sub process is done. Sometimes I want to do things asynchronously, right? So convert to PDF is a great candidate for this. I don't want to hold up my process timeline just to convert a PDF. It would be better just to have a sub process that has one activity, the convert to PDF activity, um, to do my PDF conversions. PDF conversions can take a long time, especially if you have a very large document. It's got a lot of images, PowerPoint files. I routinely see PowerPoint files from one of our customers that go up to 100 megabytes. It's one heck of a presentation, I can tell you that. Well, that takes a while to convert to PDF because I've got to go through every PowerPoint slide and I've got to create a PDF page for that slide. And I got to compile all the images and blah, blah, blah. It takes a while. Well, I don't want my end user to be sitting there for 5 minutes waiting for this one PDF conversion simply because they, submitted the form. What I want is for that to happen asynchronously. I need for it to happen in the background. So this is one of those weird things where depending on when I want it to happen, it doesn't really affect the form. It doesn't really affect the timeline. All I'm doing is creating an attachment, a PDF attachment that ultimately will probably be attached to the timeline. But I don't want to slow everything else down, especially if I'm in the middle of a user activity. And you may have seen this before, right? Where you have a convert to PDF configured directly on the form. And you hit the button and then the little spinny appears. And then you sit there for 4 or 5 minutes while your huge PowerPoint presentation gets converted to PDF. Or even worse, on my timeline. So I fill out my form and I hit submit on my form. And the next activity type on my process timeline happens to be convert to PDF. Now I can do that. There's no problem with it. The conversion will occur. I don't know what I've done, but convert to PDF, add custom task. Okay, so now activity 2. So let's say activity 1 is a user activity. I do something on the form, make whatever changes I need to make for it, hit the submit button. It now moves to activity 2. Activity 2 is a convert to PDF activity. Well, when I click the submit button on my form, the little spinny is just going to sit there and spin, and it is going to sit there and spin for however long it takes for this PDF version or this PDF conversion to complete. That's going to make me unhappy as an end user. So what I'm probably going to want to do, rather than call that PDF conversion directly in the process timeline, what I'm probably going to want to do is, and I can't configure it now, so we're going to have to come back to it. What I probably want is some sort of activity, some process, in fact, some new timeline. So we'll create a new process timeline that we are going to call PDF conversion. And we're going to hit OK. And we're going to create an activity. And we're going to make this activity a custom task activity type. And we are going to pick our convert to PDF over here. And I'm not going to go through all of the configuration for it. I'm just going to kind of set it up. So we'll go to PDF custom task and we'll do a convert to PDF. We'll add that custom task. Obviously, there's some conversion that we would have to do for whatever it is that we're going to convert. I'm not going to set it up here, but it's going to exist. I now have a process timeline that will do a convert to PDF on that activity. In fact, we'll just call this activity convert to PDF. Now I've got a choice depending on how I want this conversion to work, because either in my main timeline or in my main form, the custom task I'm actually going to want to run is down here under process, and it's run process. I'm going to add that to custom task. I'm going to say, this is my CT webinar form. I don't think I need it for this particular custom task, but now I will just go to this custom task, open her up, and I will configure it to start my PDF conversion timeline. There it is. And I'll do whatever other conversion I need to do. I don't actually need a new form or anything like that. But here's the thing. Now I'm just calling run process. And let's just call this, instead of activity 2, call PDF conversion. And we'll close that. So now I've got to call PDF conversion. So let's say that activity 1 is now a user activity. I'm going to submit my form. What it's going to call next is the run process custom task. It's going to invoke the run process, and then we are going to immediately move to the next activity in the process timeline. So as a user, what I am not going to see is this long spinny that is going to keep going and make me wait while a PDF conversion is going on. I just called the call PDF to run a process. It invoked the process. Once the process has been invoked, which happens essentially instantly, this activity ends and I can move on with my process timeline. Now, do I call it here in the process timeline? Maybe. Maybe I want to run it manually. So maybe on my form, I've got a button. I'm about to have a button anyway. Where's the button control? There it is. And we'll call it button PDF. And convert to PDF is my text on my button. I could make it, exciting, chunky colors, but we'll be happy with just a button. It just needs to exist. Now on my form, I would do the same thing. I still need to convert this to PDF, but now I've got a process to do it. So on my, button PDF, I am just going to call. Oh, I already have that in here. Sorry. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of, well, actually, I'm not going to get rid of it. Let me keep it. Let me just turn that event off. So let me just create the process and run process. We'll add that custom task. There's my PDF button. Now we'll configure my run process. And obviously, of course, the process we're going to call is our PDF conversion. Same thing applies now on the form. So if I have a button on the form, when it runs, all I have to do is click the button. When I click the button, it's going to invoke my sub process. And in this case, it's not really even a sub process. It's just a separate process that is just going to do the conversion. It's kind of a sub process, but it's an asynchronous sub process. It's just going to go offline. It's going to do the PDF conversion. And whenever that PDF conversion is done, it's just going to go ahead and punch all of its attachments back up to the parent process. At least that's the default behavior. And my converted PDF will automatically be attached. So the second thing you have to think about is, all right, is this something I want the user to do directly or not? If you want the user to do something directly, like I want the user to manually convert the PDF, then you have to put it on the form, because the user has no access to the timeline, and the user can't make stuff happen on the timeline. So if it affects the process, or you don't want the user to be involved in determining whether it runs, then you can do it in the process timeline. If it doesn't affect the process and you specifically want the user to invoke it, then it will need to be run on the form itself. Similarly, this copy form data, this is another one where it's fairly common that you need to take data from one form and transfer it over to another form. So where do you do that? On the process timeline, or do you do it on the form? In this case, it's a little more straightforward. Most of the time you'll do it on the timeline. The only time you'd really do it on the form is if you specifically wanted the user to invoke it. Then you wouldn't have a choice. It would have to go on the form. So I can't really give you hard and fast rules about whether something can run on the form or whether you should run it on the process timeline. You just have to kind of think through, where would I prefer it to run, assuming that it's possible to run on both. What level of user interaction do I need? And does it require the form, like the get geolocation? Does it require that it happen on the form? Because even if the user doesn't invoke it, right? Like get geolocation. So we'll just grab it here real fast. Form. There it is. And we'll add that custom task. You don't necessarily have to have the user invoke the custom task, but as I explained previously, this can only run on a form. So I'm probably going to want to run it on either form creation or view state init. Form creation is when the form is first invoked and the system begins to pull the data back that it needs to construct the form. View state init is when the form is actually being painted on the page for the first time. So you could actually set it to view state init or even form creation to run your get geolocation. And you'll want to take whatever the lat and long are, and you're going to want to put them into a form field. And it's a really simple thing to configure. You just, what field stores the latitude and what field stores the longitude. And no human is ever going to invoke this, right? Other than by opening a form. So when the form hits view state init after it's been created, it will just automatically go look at the geolocation service, pull back whatever the service says is your current lat and long, and it's done. It just fills out a form field on the form. There's no real human action that's required to invoke it. It just gets invoked when the form event fires to save that form data. So you've really got three levels of things to think through. First of all, can it run on a form or can it run on a process timeline? If it can, is it something I want to do in the process? And also, if I run it, will it affect the process itself? Or is it something that only affects the form and can be safely run from the form? Is there an event that I can associate with on a form that will run it without user interaction if I don't want the interaction? If there has to be user interaction, then it has to be run on the form. So there's just sort of this trail of thought that you need to follow about when and where these things happen. Also, not only do I want the user to invoke it, do I want the user to see it happen? Like convert to PDF, something you don't want the user to see happen. So how you invoke it and when you invoke it is an important consideration for where it is that you want to place it. If you put it on the form, then the user is going to see it happen. There's always going to be at least some slight indication that custom task has occurred. Form fields are going to change. They're going to see a spinny if you're doing a convert to PDF, whatever it is. So you have to think about whether you want the user to see that. All right, so it's 11 o'clock. Got an hour left. to talk about some of the more common custom tasks. We've actually looked at a couple of them. We looked at set form data already about when we're going to run that. And really, the scenario I described is about the only time that you're going to want to run set form data. In almost every other circumstance, you are going to want to use the either set form data tab on the form or the set form data tab on, or the set form data section on your process timeline. But for this one weird little use case, the reason why we like to run this set form data as a process timeline activity, generally the very first activity that fires when the process timeline starts, is if I'm going to be using sequence numbers. I got to have a good way to not burn sequence numbers. So it really has to be on the timeline. And the second thing I want to do is I want to make it really obvious what I'm doing. If I get hit by a bus, I want the person who takes over my process timeline to just be able to open this bad boy and see set request number as the very first process timeline activity. And at that point, it becomes super obvious what it is that I'm doing. I'm setting that request number. In almost every other circumstance, I am going to want to use the set form data tab on the form or here on the process timeline. I don't think a lot of people realize that you can do set form data on the process timeline. You can. Now, it does require, for it to work, that you have the form for timeline set. Now, it will only run the set form data on this, whatever the default timeline form is. There's a caveat to that, though. There is the form actions the form actions activity on a timeline. You can actually swap out the default form. So if there was a second form where you wanted to do a set form data, what you would have to do is you would have to call the form actions activity type, set the second form as your default form for the process timeline. Then you could run the set form data activity and have it run, or the set form data, the custom task activity using the set form data custom task. You could run it there. But at that point, you could also, on the activity that follows after you have switched the two forms and you've set the second form as the default form, let's say that let's actually create the activity. So, and I'm actually not going to even configure them. I probably should, but I'm just going to call this change main form, and we'll make that the form actions custom task. I might as well configure it. I got to hit a checkbox and pick a form. I'm not even going to pick a form. Let's pretend I picked a form. Okay, that form is now the default form for this activity. So for activity 4, it doesn't really matter what type of activity. I mean, I could certainly run a set form data here, or I could just make it a quick wait task and just don't configure anything. And I'll call this activity 4, wait for form update, even though we're not going to wait. But now I've got wait for form update, so I can say, okay, well, for activity 4, hold on, let me update everything to reload it. There we go. So now for my wait for form update on task start, I can, set the value of a form field to something, and it will run. The cool thing about a wait task is that if you don't configure a wait task, it will just hit the wait task, invoke, and then move right on past it. You have to configure a wait task to actually stop the process timeline from running and actually wait. So the wait task Technically, it's not the way you're supposed to do things, but the wait task is a real good placeholder activity for you to throw in things like this setup. Having said that, look, it's kind now I have to do all of this stuff in the process timeline. So this may be one of those other cases where rather than jumping through these hoops just so that I can configure this specific set form data, maybe it would be better um, if I remove that activity and in this form update, maybe it would just be better to configure the custom task. Because if I have two forms, I don't, but let's pretend I do. What was I going to do? Set form data, right? Form data mapping, set form data, add the custom task. Let's say I had a second form. We'll pretend this is my second form. All I really have to do is just choose the item I want to set the data to, do my sequence number, and I'm done. I mean, at this point, it's just easier to configure this than it is to do a form actions custom task and then configure a wait task and then set the set form data. Sometimes set form data is easier to do. Sometimes it's easier, especially on the timeline, just to just to use the custom task. So um, either will work. However you want to do it is up to you, but you have options. Now, a really important one, and one that we don't talk about much, is the validate form custom task. The way form validation works, and let's go here to our form controls tab. And we'll look at our request number. We'll go over here to its data types. Okay, I got a couple of things about form validation. Form validation, by default, runs when the user tries to submit the form. And when it does, form validation is going to do several things. First of all, it's going to check to see whether your field is the right data for that field, right? If you want a zip code, have you set it to zip code or phone number or email address? It will go through and validate the format of the form field value, and we'll see whether it matches the data type. Then it's going to want to check to see if that field is required and to see whether you have data in that field. So it's going to do this, but it's only going to do it whenever you submit the form. So if you have 50 things that you've done wrong on the form as a user, then you're going to end up with 50 different messages by default at the very top of your form and the very bottom of your form telling the user all the things they did wrong. So if this is a integer only field and I type in the value ABC, it's going to kick off a validation failure. It's going to say, hey, this is an integer field. You must place an integer in this field. Okay, that's okay for normal validation. But again, it only happens after I hit the submit button before the form is actually submitted. So it blocks the form from being submitted. And if I have multiple errors, it's going to show me all of those errors all at one time, which might be a little daunting for the user. That's how validation works, but is that how we want it to work? Well, it doesn't have to be. We can validate forms anytime we want, right? So let's drop another field on this form that we can validate. I suppose I could validate the request number, but we'll just call it, well, let's put it below the button. And we'll just drop in a text box here and we'll call this the validation field, not validation field, just validation field. Okay, great. I also am going to want to make this an event field. And I'm also going to do one more thing here. And you know what? I might as well do it after the field. I'm going to drop in another control here. Have they moved it? Tooltip control layout. Okay. Form error string location. There we go. I'm just going to drop this control here. It'll become obvious why I'm dropping this control here in just a sec. So let's say that based on the value that I place in this field, it's going to affect other data on the form. Other things are going to happen on the form. I have some set form data actions that will occur here and there. I need to be able to catch an error here. So having the validate form custom task available to me, super useful. So I made that well, I guess I could have just checked it here. I think I made it an event field. I did make it an event field. So now let's go to our custom task event mapping tab. We don't really need any of these anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete them to make my life a little simpler. And we're going to go into our custom tasks. We're going to go to form and we're going to go to validate form. Validate form field is a little bit different. Validate form field enables you to throw in a regex expression to validate the value in a form field. If you don't know regex, you're never going to use it, but validate form you will use because remember, as I said, validate form the normal form validation happens whenever you click the submit button. I want to call my form validation earlier than that. I want to catch some things up front. So I can just say validate form. I can go into the configuration and there's not much to configure. Do I want to skip the validation rules? In this case, I don't. Do I want to validate only the event control which runs this custom task? In most cases, I do. I just want to be sure that this one field that invokes the validation saves my or gets invoked so that it prevents me from putting in a wrong value. And if I wanted to, I could throw in a field that will save the number of errors. I generally don't. I generally only care about that validation and validate fields only within parent fields. So if I have a section control, I can also set this to validate only the fields inside a specific section. That's also often very useful. So instead of validating the entire form, it only validates that form section. And so that's kind of a cool ability to be able to have. In most cases, though, you're not going to want to validate the entire form. In most cases, you want to only validate a single form field, which is what we're going to do here. So that's the option that I'm going to choose. I'm not going to save the number of errors. I know there's only going to be one max, so it doesn't really matter in this case, but it's an option that's available to you. Now, my form is not going to fail validation currently. It's going to validate just fine. So we're going to have to do something that makes it not validate. So we're going to add a validation rule on the form. So we're going to go to the validation rules tab and we're going to add one. And I do need a condition. So I want to ensure that my validation field um, contains A. Oh, by the way, this is case sensitive. So just keep that in mind. So my validation field contains A. And if it does not contain A, I have two choices. Validation fails if condition is met or condition is not met. In this case, we're going to set it to validation fails if condition is not met. I need to have an A somewhere in my field. And I'm just going to set a message. It probably needs to be more helpful than that. But that's the message we're going with now. I am missing an A. I've got to tell the user I'm missing an A. And I need to pick the form control, which is the validation field that I want to mark as being an error. Now, as you saw earlier, I also put my error string message right next to the field. So my error string is now going to be co-located with my field. So when I type in my value and I tab out of it, there we go. I love A. You must give me A. So for this to work, I'm going to have to change the value. It must contain an A somewhere, and it will give me that error message until I fix that field. So I am calling the form validation instantly right from the form field itself. And so the validation is going to run automatically. And I can never really get to the submit bit. Well, I mean, I guess I can. I can hit submit at any time. It's not going to change anything because I've still failed validation. So until I put an A in there, I can't really do much else on my form. I got to get rid of that. I've got to get rid of that validation error. The thing is, I ran the validation error right here on the form field itself. All I have to do is hit tab. The form validation occurs immediately. I never have to submit. And now if I change this and I hit tab, now I can go ahead and do whatever else I need to do on my form and tab my way through it until I'm ready to submit it. And then I can hit submit and we're done. I'm good to go. I know that my validation has worked. So validate form, very useful. Another useful custom task, and I'm going to have to go through these. Okay, I don't have to go through them super quick, but we are running out of time. So let's take a look at the next one. There's actually two that we want to look at. One is show alert. So let me go to form and show alert and add that one. And let me go back here to form and advanced show alert. Now, the show alert custom task is a task that BP Logix created to show a simple alert box on the form. And, I have my button. Great. We're going to set that to the button so we can show it. So basically, all I need is a caption to make this thing work. I don't really need to select anything else. I have the ability to. So I'm going to set up my alert caption. There are some other things I can set, the alert text. And I can set the alert icon I want for it. So this one we'll do success. And I can also test the alert from here. It will just go ahead and show me my message. It's a very comforting message. And of course, obviously, I want to correct that one typo there. And I will hit OK. And that's really all it does. When my form runs, I now have a button. Oh, I didn't set that. We're going to set button PDF to kick off my show alert. We'll update. Did I get rid of my form? I must have gotten rid of my form. So we'll run it again, convert to PDF. And there we go. There's my alert box. Things are okay. Do not be afraid. Nothing has gone wrong. Cool. This is one we created. And so it's real useful just to be able to send out messages. But I mean, it is a limited utility. I can show you a message, but while that's cool, I guess, the form will be submitted. Click OK. Great. One of our customers at the city of Fort Worth created the advanced show alert custom task. It's way better than ours because it gives you way more control. Now, I will say that even though this was created by Sean Campbell, I always try to be sure that I give the appropriate attribution for this because this is a very cool custom task. Sean Campbell at the city of Fort Worth, Texas, created this. We have done some tweaking on it in the interim, and Sean has done some tweaking on it in the interim. So we have collaborated on building this custom task, and it does cool things. Not only does it show you a message, so all the stuff up here is the same as the regular show alert custom task. You have all of this stuff here. You can throw a footer on there and put in footer text. You can have it, if you hit, you can have it show a confirmation button where you can set the text and color, a cancel button. So you can have an OK and a cancel button. And when you hit OK, you can select a button that the form will click for you whenever you hit the confirmation. So you can have a button on the form that gets clicked automatically to invoke a custom task or whatever you would like it to do. If you clicked OK on the confirmation, you can even throw in input fields here. So you can throw an input field into the alert box and have that input field take the value that you enter and stick it into a form field. This is a fantastic custom task. I wish we'd have thought of it because it would have made us look so good to come up with something this cool. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we certainly were not above getting Sean's permission to throw it into the product so that all of you could have it as well. So if you like this custom task, let Sean know. You can log on to the Circle community and send Sean a thumbs up. This is a very good custom task to use whenever you want to do user confirmations to get explicit permission to do something or cancel something, like, delete a value from a form or delete a form instance or whatever. You can run this stuff off the front end of the UI, and you have this fine-grained control over how it works. So it may be a custom task that is of interest to you, that you want to run on a form. Now, both the show alert and the advanced show alert are specifically form custom tasks. They cannot be run off of a process timeline. They have to be run in the context of a form itself. One of the other ones that you're going to use a lot is copy form data, which enables you to copy all or part of a form from one form to another. So actually, you know what? I have examples of this elsewhere. I'm not going to build it from scratch if I don't have to, and I don't have to. So let's go into my archive here. And I think I've got form custom tasks. We'll go over there and copy form data. All right, so here's where copy form data comes in clutch for you. So I have two forms, and they're both going to be part of this timeline. Now, I'm going to have an original form that is the form I'm going to submit. And then I'm going to have a new form that is going to become the default form for this timeline at some point. So I need to do something. When I submit my form, I am going to need to create a new instance of that new form. And I am going to, in this activity too, I probably should have named it swap forms or something like that. I'm going to swap out my old form with my new form. So my new form is going to be set as the default form instance for this timeline. And then I have a review activity so that I can look at the new form. And what the copy form data allows me to do is to copy the data, as the name implies, from one form to another. So my container form here is going to be my original form. I'm going to go into my configuration screen, and I'm going to set new form as the form to create. And I'm going to set it as a timeline reference. This is very important, especially because I'm going to make this form the primary form, the default form for the process timeline after I copy all the data over. And I want to set it as a timeline reference because forms are timeline references. So whenever you submit a form and it invokes a process timeline, the original form now becomes a timeline attachment. This is also why on the attach form controls, the default is to attach document attachments to the process as well. Because if I open up the timeline instance, which is the process instance you'll most likely be using, when I open the timeline instance, I now have, from the timeline instance itself, access to the form and access to all of the document attachments that I've added to the form. So it's important in this case to be sure that timeline reference is checked, because I do want both of these forms ultimately to be timeline references. And as an administrator, if I want to go back and look at both of those forms, I only have to go to one place, not only just the forms, but the document attachments, if any. I only have to go to one place, the timeline attachment, to access them. I am going to switch over all attachments, but there aren't any attachments, so that is not really anything I have to worry about. But I do need to worry about where I'm going to map my data. I need to copy my data from, in this case, I'm only copying one field. I'm copying it from the input one control, and I'm copying it to the input one control on the new form. So my container form is my original form where the original data exists. My new form is going to be the new form. That's what it's named. And I'm going to go ahead and throw some data into that new form. Now, I only have a couple of fields, so there's not much mapping to be done. But I mean, technically, you could map as many fields as you needed from one form to another. And indeed, if all of your form field names were the same, you could map to all of the fields where the field was the same name. I've already got this configured this way to add my mapping. I thought there was another. Maybe I'm thinking of a different custom task. If I get rid of this, don't they have the? Oh, okay. Yeah. Map to all fields except the following fields, where I would just go through and I would, as long as my names are the same, I could just have it map everything and then pick the fields that I wanted to make as an exception. But I want to do the opposite. I only want to do one field. Let me be sure that I'm back to status quo ante on this. Okay. And so now it will do that mapping for me. whenever it runs. So here's my original form. We're going to run it. And it only has a couple of fields. So we'll call this one AAA, and we'll call this field BBB, and I will submit my form. Note, this is original form that I am going to submit. And we'll wait and we'll wait and we'll wait. Now we're looking at a different form, but we did copy my AAA, and now I have this field that is ready for fresh and vibrant new data for me to enter. And now I have reviewed it and I am done. And of course, for my timeline, I can just go into my, I don't have any active timelines because I just completed it, didn't I? I can now go into my timeline instance, and I can go to the timeline items, and there is my original form, which I can open and look at as well as my new form that I can also open and look at. And of course, if there are any attachments, I'd be able to look at them there as well. Convert to PDF. First of all, let me give you a warning on convert to PDF. Specifically for PowerPoint files, depending on what version of the product you're on, and I'm not sure what the version changes at 6.1.504, maybe, I don't remember. But here's the problem. Microsoft, being Microsoft, has decided to make many exciting changes to the way PowerPoint documents are constructed. And because they've decided, you know what, who cares about the open document format? We don't need no stinking standards. We can just create our own open document format that only we use. And that's exactly what they've done. Now, the problem with that is how documents work. So let's just open up a PowerPoint file. All right, we'll just do this real quick. Give you a little demonstration. So we're going to create a new PowerPoint file. This is awfully big. So there we go. Click to add title, whatever. Fine. I'm done. I've made my PowerPoint file. So let's save it. And I'm going to save it to my downloads folder so that I can quickly delete it. So we'll browse to downloads and we'll save presentation1.pptx. Okay, cool so far, right? Let me show you what that is. Back in the before times, PowerPoint presentations, PowerPoint files, PPT, DOC files for Word documents, XLS files for Excel files, those are all binaries. Those are all compiled binaries, and they're fully proprietary. When the open document format was released, Microsoft adopted the parts it liked and then added a whole bunch of stuff that it wanted into the open document format. What, you ask, is the open document format? Well, I'll show you. If you take any PPTX, XLSX, DOCX file, and you rename them, there it is. We're going to rename presentation1 PPTX to presentation1.zip. Are you sure you want to change it? Yes, I'm sure I want to change it. Okay, well, now I've got this thing called presentation1.zip, which I can, in point of fact, extract and this is what a PowerPoint file is. A PowerPoint file is just a bunch of XML. A Word document is just a bunch of XML. There you go. This is all XML. Cool. All of the documents are a bunch of XML. And there are these doc props that are all of these XML properties. And Microsoft decided to create a whole bunch of new XML properties for PowerPoints. So what happens is that when the PowerPoint converter, the version that was in prior to, I think it was .504, it might have been .506, I don't remember. But there was an older version of the Asposé library that did the PDF conversion. And so because Microsoft changed the structure of PDFs, that old library no longer works for PDF files. I mean, it might, but if anybody uses any of those new XML tags that Microsoft threw in there, it doesn't work. So you're probably, and unfortunately, it's not from the custom task. It is part of the product. You're probably going to have to upgrade the product if you run into that PowerPoint files problem, because we updated the Asposé library, or to be more precise, Asposé updated their library to account for these weird changes that Microsoft decided to make PowerPoint. And so now it works. So you're going to use Convert to PDF quite a lot. There's not much to the Convert to PDF, although, as I said earlier, you can run it from both the form or a process timeline. So with Convert to PDF, and let's just go ahead and get rid of all of these. Now, I do get people after every webinar who say, hey, can you send me the webinar stuff for this webinar? You're going to be super disappointed if you ask me that today, because I'm doing everything on the fly and I'm kind of erasing as we go. And everything I'm doing is ad hoc anyway. I'm not even fully configuring everything. So it's not really going to be worth your time to ask me to give you what I've got here, because you're just going to have to rewatch the webinar. I'm sorry. So let's go back to PDF custom tasks, and we'll go to Convert to PDF, and we'll add that. And happily, I can fully configure this one here. We're going to have our button PDF actually convert a PDF. Finally, it is getting to fulfill its purpose. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and configure it. Now, Convert to PDF is super easy. There's really only one thing that you have to figure out what you want to convert. And that's whether you want to convert the current form only. So it will only convert the form and nothing else, or whether you want to use process references or form references. Usually, especially if you're going to have attachments, you're going to want to set this to process references. And that way it will look at the timeline instance, which, as I told you, is where everything should be. And it will take everything that's a timeline reference and will do the PDF conversion. So you can convert just a form. You can convert just a document. If you set this to process references and you set your item data type to documents, it would not convert the form. It would only convert the documents. And of course, conversely, I could only convert the form and not convert the documents, or I could just convert, everything. Of course, the data type doesn't matter. If you just want the form, you can just hit current form only. That makes the data type disappear. So I don't really know why you would do that unless you had multiple forms as part of your process. In that case, this would be the use case that you would use. But you have to select the item type. So that's the important first thing. And then the important second thing, where are we going to attach these objects? Now, we should attach everything to the process, because we generally do attach everything to the process. That's the best practice that we recommend. By default, it's going to output as PDF, but although this is called the Convert to PDF custom task, you can in fact convert to a TIFF file. Please do not convert to a TIFF file. TIFF files are uncompressed image formats. And so they puff up like a tick with every tiny incremental increase in screen resolution and size. We do this specifically because there are sometimes images, photographs, medical imaging, things like that, that do need to be in an uncompressed, original, high quality format. TIFF provides that. So there are use cases for setting TIFF, but you really need to be careful because TIFF files are huge. And the larger they are, the size of the file jumps. It doesn't jump linearly, it jumps algorithmically, logarithmically, and a 5 by 10 JPEG that you can save at 200 kilobytes might be a 12 megabyte image file in TIFF. So be super careful of that. Most of the time, though, we don't care about TIFF images. All we care about is PDF. So that is what we're going to use. We got a couple of advanced options for things that we can do. Obviously, you can limit items to a specific group so that only objects in a specific group get converted. That applies to forms as well. Remember, forms can also have a group name. So if you have both, document attachments and you have multiple forms and one or two of your forms has a specific group name, then you could convert just those forms and those document attachments by just the group name. By default, the routing slip, or what we have now decided to call the audit trail, does not print whenever you do a convert to PDF. That is intentional, but some customers do want the convert to, or do want to see the audit trail on the converted doc. So we give you a checkbox to do that. And there's also a checkbox to save the form before the conversion. If it's kind of an edge case, but if a user has opened up a form, if they have made any changes on the form, those changes only exist on the form itself inside their browser. It doesn't exist on the server. And it wouldn't exist unless either they manually saved the form or they submitted the form. Now, the thing about the convert to PDF is that it does have to run on the server. Yes, I'm saying I'm calling it from a form. We're configuring it on a form right now, but when we run it, it's actually going to run on the server. Has to, because that's where the PDF conversion library exists. So what it's going to do is it's going to grab all the forms and all of the documents, and it is going to start doing the PDF conversion that you want it to do and convert each one of them at this point individually. We can change that, as we'll see later. Now, the thing about that is, if I've opened up the form and I've made some changes, those changes only exist on the form that I'm looking at in my browser. They don't exist on the server. So save form before conversion ensures that any changes that I've made on the form since I last opened it will get saved back to the server so that when the PDF conversion occurs, it also includes whatever changes they've made on the form since they opened it. So the other thing, PDF output options, these are largely formatting options. You can set HTML page width, you can configure headers and footers on the PDF pages that get created. Most of the time, people just elide past this, but you do have a lot of options for how you want your PDF documents to look, including headers and footers. Now, I do note that we do have some customers who always throw in header and footer text so that says, this is, converted to PDF on, current date, and they just have some annotations. So it's useful to do that. I'm one of those people that generally goes right past it and goes here to advanced because this is an important feature. So once again, we have a group name. This is going to be the group name that gets applied to the attachments or attachment that we're about to create here by converting to PDF. So currently, the way that we're configured, every form, every document will now be converted into a separate PDF file. And we need to set a group name for what attachment group all of those PDF files are going to be. And if there's already something existing there, perhaps you've run an earlier convert to PDF, you may wish to delete the existing items and replace them with these new items, or if you keep it unchecked, it will just append whatever new items you create to that group. So the thing is, right now, if I was to run this, it would work and it would convert every attachment. I don't have any, and I've only got one form, but it would convert everything to separate PDF files. I can change that. I can click this button to output all of the items to a single PDF file. And when I do so, I can say, okay, I'm going to specify the name of the PDF file. So I can use system variables or whatever, and it will just create that PDF file with that particular name. It will take all of my forms, all of my documents, mash them into a single PDF file. Now, I got to figure out, okay, if I'm going to do that, and I'm going to throw everything together all into one, big honking PDF file, I'm probably concerned with how that's going to be organized. So we have some options. We can sort it alphabetically by name, by the time the item was attached, when it was created, or when it was last updated. And so we have 4 different selections for sort order. And we can sort whichever selection we choose. We can sort it in ascending order or descending order. And then there's this final one here, group forms together. So if we don't check this, then what is going to happen is it is going to take, let's say we decide to sort alphabetically in ascending order. It's just going to take all of our attachments, whether they're forms or documents, and it's just going to order them by name. And if our form is called the Z protocol form, and all of our document attachments begin with some letter prior to Z, Y, or lower, then my form is actually going to be the very last page in the PDF file that gets created. So what I'm probably going to want to do is group my forms together. That way my forms will appear at the very first part. So if I have multiple forms, those forms will show up in alphabetical order at the very first part of the PDF file. And then all of my documents will separately be shown, again, sorted alphabetically, after all of the forms are displayed. So you got a lot of different options here for how you want to do that. Now I've only got one thing to convert, so output all items is not really all that big a deal. I can just go, I'm going to update and run this form. I'm going to do a convert to PDF. There's nothing to see here to convert to PDF, but you can see my little spinny is spinning. And convert to PDF failed. Contact your administrator. Okay, either I've got something, oh, well, I may have just misconfigured it. Convert to PDF failed. Contact your administrator. We've only got 7 minutes left. I don't have time to track it down. Not sure why the PDF conversion failed. I'd have to look through the logs and find out. What I was hoping to do was to, oh, you know what? I think I may have known why it failed. Let's throw some information in here and let's submit my form. Now that my form has been submitted, oh no. Oh, that should be fine. Now that my form is submitted, I should be able to open it up. And now if I hit convert to PDF, that's what I was hoping to see. Needed to submit the form first because I'm converting form instances, or sorry, I'm converting process attachments. And I hadn't submitted the form yet. Thus, there was no process, thus no process attachments, thus PDF conversion failed. So now I can go to my completed timelines. Well, if I can click on the right thing, I can go to my completed timelines. I should be able to pop this open, go into my timeline items, and there's nothing there. That's active timelines, completed timelines, webinar CT, timeline items. There we go. I opened up the PDF conversion timeline instance. I didn't open my webinar timeline, but there we go. There is my webinar form submitted. And here is my PDF that was created with just my 2 values that I added to my form. So my PDF conversion worked exactly as I wanted to. Now, the convert to PDF, we're not going to demo this, but this is great for a data retention scenario, right? Where I've been a process director customer for years. I got a whole bunch of forms and timelines, many of them years old. Well, what you can do is run a knowledge view to pull all of the old stuff that you don't want to keep in your database anymore. Convert the forms and all of the attachments to PDF. Then you can export that PDF that is the merged PDF that has all of your objects. You can then export that as a document attachment. You can export that to some accessible file system and thus have everything archived. And once you export it to the file system, now you just delete that process instance. It may have run 5-10 years ago. You don't need it anymore. You're past the audit period. You can just run this archive thing, convert everything to PDF, export the PDFs to your file system, delete the old process instances, and now you have the PDF archive as attachments in your file system, accessible whenever you need to. And if you checked the little checkbox for the routing slip on the custom task, which I would strongly recommend that you do if you're doing an archive. So you're going to want to be sure that when you do that, you include the audit trail so that it shows the routing slip at the bottom of every single form. Now you've got your archive, you've deleted all your old stuff, you've freed up all of your data. That also means if you have users that haven't participated, normally you can't delete users because if you do, it makes everything go higgledy-piggledy in the system because they've been doing stuff in your system. You lose track of their activities. So you have to just disable people. But if you have old users and they haven't participated in any activities since back in the day, you could actually go back in and clean up those disabled users as well. So you can actually reclaim a fair amount of database space by doing that sort of archiving over time. So that convert to PDF, that's a pretty useful custom task, and it's one that you can use in many different scenarios. However, our current scenario is a lack of time to continue any further with this topic. So we're going to say goodbye, wish you a good week. There will be a training webinar next week, Thursday, the 2nd. I'm taking the week off the week after that, so there will not be any webinars for that second week of the first full week of July. And then I'll be back after that for who knows how long before I take more time off. But we will see you next week. We are having a webinar, so I will look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week. So long.